I've been having a lot of conversations with colleagues in the M&A space, both on the buy side and the sell side. Operations can often turn out to be either misunderstood, or at least the importance of it, or looked at by a numbers person rather than an ops person. And this is a huge mistake, and it can cost you millions of unnecessary expenses, turnover, and technology debt, and convoluted learning curves that frankly no one ever gets. So, yes, I know mergers and acquisitions are often seen as a numbers game. I hear about it all the time. Valuations, EBITDA multipliers, deal structures, and all of the nuances that go along with the financial aspect of the deal. Do you know why a large majority of these deals either fail or, like I just mentioned, cost you more money than you anticipated? Here is the truth. I'd say half, if not more than half, of M&A deals fail to deliver the expected value. And that's just based on recent conversations that I've had with colleagues in the M&A space and some prospects looking to turn things around. And to add to that, the fail is rarely due to financials. I decided to do a little bit of research just to give you something to chew on and to back up what I'm saying and seeing with my own eyes. Okay. According to Harvard Business Review, in an article they published in early 2020, most studies between 70 and 90% of acquisitions fail. Most explanations for this depressing number emphasize the problems with integrating the two parties. This is applicable even in businesses that are complementary to yours and businesses that you believe are the closest thing to a carbon copy. The real issue is operations aren't streamlined in the acquiring business, they aren't streamlined in the acquired business, and there's usually a plan, sort of, on what's going to happen after the acquisition. Now, I know that some of you may be saying, nope, our business is streamlined. We have a process that works, and the companies that we acquire need to follow our process or else, usually. Now, another notable misconception, which I will cover in another video, is Company A acquires Company B and assumes Company B is just now a part of Company A, and not that Company A and Company B are now a whole new company behind the scenes. Okay. So I've decided to do a series on this very topic because it is so misunderstood. In this series, we're going to dive deep into M&A from an operational lens. Whether you're on the buy side looking to acquire a company or on the sell side preparing to exit. Today, we're going to lay down the foundation and break down the core reasons for M&A failures and the difference between the buy side and the sell side operations, and the key frameworks that drive successful deals. Let's start with the big question. Why do M&A deals fail? The key reasons for M&A deal failure is operational misalignment. This is where the companies don't fit together behind the scenes. Integration nightmares. Now, when I refer to integration nightmares, I'm referring to systems, processes, and teams that just don't merge smoothly together. And yes, this happens even in the best of deals. Next here is cultural clashes. You have a culture clash when employees don't buy into this transition. This very, very often leads to high attrition. Next here is hidden liabilities like operational inefficiencies that weren't uncovered during the due diligence. Now let's take a look at a real world example. I've refreshed my memory on this deal because it happened back in 2011, if you can remember. Hewlett Packard acquired a company called Autonomy, which was an enterprise software company. They, for lack of a better explanation, they specialized in knowledge management. Anyway, Hewlett Packard acquired them for $11 billion. I want you to remember that number. The idea here was Hewlett Packard wanted to expand its software capabilities. Now, within a year, HP, Hewlett Packard, had to write off $8.8 billion of that deal. Why? Because due diligence failed to uncover serious operational issues, which included inflated revenue and incompatible systems. So this wasn't a financial problem, it was an operational problem. Now, whether you're acquiring a company or preparing to sell, your approach to operations will be very different. Let's break it down. Now, buy side. What acquirers should be focusing on is scalability. Can this business grow efficiently when it's added to the parent company? Now, you may be saying yes, duh. Like we wouldn't be buying it if that answer were no. Hold on a minute and let me get through the rest of these priorities and hopefully this will make sense. Next here is process efficiencies. Are the operations optimized in the acquiring company and in the company you acquired? Okay. Or are you planning to acquire and it's just waste? This really does need to be looked at with a fine-tooth comb from your operations team, okay? Next here is technology and systems. A couple of things here on this one. First, can your current systems handle the influx of volume? And when I say volume is more users, customers, entries, etc. Next, are the systems you're acquiring able to handle, again, the influx of users, customers, and entries? Or will this whole thing end up needing a major IT upgrade post acquisition? You don't want to be stuck with one or the other. And you may or may not want to or be able to upgrade your technology. Now, I say this because few think about this and even less load test. If the need to replace systems arises, please take this very seriously because implementing a new software is an enormous undertaking in and of itself. And even worse, if you select the wrong system, I highly suggest you check out a video I did earlier in this library on how to select software. This will go back to what I just went over on process and efficiency. Okay, and lastly, workforce and culture. This is another bucket I don't think is considered as critical or one that needs a careful plan. Will the teams integrate well or will there be pushback? Now, in this case, I know some of you plan to cut your workforce, and if necessary, yes, of course. But if you follow what I just mentioned, you may not have to cut your workforce, certainly not as much as you initially thought. And what you can do is put those folks in smarter roles as you scale this business. Buyers aren't just looking at revenue, they should want to know, are the operations solid enough to sustain long term value? If not, this deal could turn into a money pit. The sell side. Now, before we get into your side of the operational priorities, if you want to sell a profitable business that is worth what you think it's worth, plan on planning. Yes, give yourself 5 years at least, if not more, to plan for this exit. Okay. Exiting a business does require a lot of planning. Now, let's go through your list of priorities. The first one here is reducing dependencies. A dependency, if you are a small to middle market business, this can the business run without the owner? Okay. For larger organizations, I want to expand a little bit more on these because your dependencies are very different. For large organizations, dependencies refer to critical factors like systems and relationships that may influence operational inefficiencies, scalability, and strategic execution. All right. Now, we're going to go over the dependencies for larger organizations a little bit further. Okay. Now, remember, we're still on dependencies. This is specifically for large organizations. The first here is technology and infrastructure, enterprise software that has licenses, customizations, think SAP, Oracle, Microsoft Dynamics, software that is very expensive and complicated to replace. Legacy systems. Why is this important? Dependencies on outdated technology that may require modernization, scrubbing of data, and additional customizations for a seamless integration. Not paying attention to this can turn into a number that may cost someone their job. Data interoperability. Now, that's just fancy for ensuring multiple systems across multiple departments, likely multiple locations, like finance, HR, operations, can communicate and share the same data. Now, I know that this one here is cybersecurity and compliance is top of mind for most CTOs, CIOs, COOs, but it's worth mentioning. Dependence on security frameworks like SOC 2, ISO 27001, GDPR all need to be considered a dependency in this transaction and soon to be migration. Remember, we're still on that first bullet of reducing dependencies. Next here is human capital and workforce, key talent and leadership dependencies. Next section here is human capital and workforce. Key talent and leadership dependencies. Most of you will know exactly what I mean here. Reliance on specific executives or teams. Next is skills and knowledge gaps. Now, I go over in another video what a knowledge gap is, and I encourage you to check it out. However, if you actually do have a knowledge gap, which is specialized expertise that may not be easily replaced, this one can really make or break this deal. Employee retention and engagement. Now, I know most of you already know how important this is, but for those that aren't considering this important, please know that this is critical for maintaining institutional knowledge and a seamless transaction. HR and payroll systems. Think about ADP, Workday, UKG. Those are critical systems to your business and really need to be considered when you're selling. Now, the buyer will take inventory of your entire technological infrastructure, so make sure your data is clean and your systems are up to date. You've prepared your business for such a time, okay? Operational and supply chain dependencies. Supplier and vendor ecosystems, having dependencies on things like manufacturing, logistics, and sourcing, okay? Next here is just in time, also referred to as JIT, supply chain risks, dependencies on real time inventory management. Okay. Regulatory compliance. I know you already know this. However, regulatory compliance is regulatory compliance, and I need to mention it. I would be remiss if I didn't. So, FDA, SEC, HIPAA, any industry specific regulations. geopolitical and market dependencies. Now, there are risks associated with international supply chains. However, I say this all the time. Two things here: absolutely never be in a situation where you have a single source supplier. I don't care if they are next door to you. And always, when selecting multiple suppliers, it is critical to diversify their geography. Okay. And lastly, for the first three dependencies, business continuity and disaster recovery. I know from working for and with enterprise organizations that you very likely have redundancy plans for critical operations, but it's worth having a look at them and revisiting or modernizing them as needed. Okay. Next, customer revenue and dependencies, key accounts and customer concentration. Do you have an over reliance on a small number of major clients? Sometimes we refer to them as whales. When enterprise to enterprise loses a large account, it is just as detrimental to their business as it is to an SMB. Okay. Recurring revenue versus one-time sale. This applies to a very specific business model. This applies to very specific business models that have dependencies on subscription models versus project-based revenue. Market position and brand equity. Perception is almost everything. Brand perception and customer loyalty will make or break this deal. Make sure you have a positive brand equity. Customer service and retention tools. We all live and die by the mercy of our customers. So think about, what tools are you using for your customer service or retention? Think Zendesk, ServiceNow, chatbots, things like that. These next two we'll just go through quickly, as most large transactions that fail really are typically around ops, which was what I covered in the first four. But the next two I'll mention because they're still very important. Financial and capital dependencies, cash flow, liquidity, available working capital. Debt and financing structures, bank loans, private equity, venture capital constraints, things like that. This really only applies to kind of the middle market. Pricing and cost structure dependencies. This can be an operational concern, such as sensitivity to inflation or supply chain costs. The next one here is risk management and infrastructure. Coverage for operational disruptions. This, frankly, has become fairly mainstream over the last 10 years or so. Okay, and the very last for this section here is reducing dependencies on compliance and governance dependencies. Legal regulatory frameworks, SEC, GDPR, CCPA, SOX, things like that, compliance. Corporate governance structures. This is really things like board dependencies, decision making frameworks. This is discussed in the due diligence efforts. ESG and sustainability commitments, environmental, social, and governance compliance. Most also require this of their suppliers, folks like me. And lastly, here, audit and reporting requirements, which you all know, if you're in a regulated industry, internal and external financial reporting standards, things like that. Okay, let's get back to the sell side list. We just covered what's involved in that very first bullet, which was a lot: reducing dependencies. Now let's move on. We can run through this relatively quickly, okay? Streamlining operations, no surprise here. Cleanup inefficiencies before due diligence. Financial and data transparency. No surprise here for buyers, hence that transaction I shared earlier about Hewlett Packard. Okay. And demonstrating growth. Buyers will pay more for a business that is poised to scale. So, what does M&A success truly look like? It comes down to three core frameworks: value creation, operational due diligence, post merger integration. Okay. The first here is value creation. How does this deal increase operational efficiency, reduce cost, or expand market reach? Buyers and sellers both need a roadmap for unlocking long term value. The second one here is operational due diligence, or ODD. This identifies hidden risks beyond financial statements. Evaluate technology infrastructure, processes, workforce, and compliance. Next, determine if the business is truly scalable. And the third one here is post-merger integration, or PMI. The most overlooked part of M&A involves system migration, cultural alignment, and workforce retention. Poor integration of any of these could mean lost value. By now, I think we've established a baseline for the concept that M&A isn't just about financials. It's about making sure the business operates efficiently before, during, and after the deal. In the next episode, we'll dive deep into the buy side strategy, how acquirers identify the right targets, and conduct operational due diligence.